So
we started recording. You can talk into the mic.
All right. My bad.
We're talking about back when I was a journalist. Oh, that is.
You were never a journalist.
No. I was an artist, though. So we were, kindred spirits.
No.
No,
Journalism's actually a form of science, as Cam would attest to.
very precise.
Very precise. It's about rational interpretation of the world around us.
Inquiry.
Music is actually about fart-assing around. I put it to you.
No, I was talking about the visual arts.
Oh, okay. Are you a painter?
No.
3D artist?
Kind of conceptual. We have a guest this week.
We do have a guest. You may have heard. Third mic. We've been talking about, on multiple episodes, glancingly, the social media ban that passed the Australian Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it in the lead up to it. We announced on an episode, it may have been free, it may have been premium. I don't remember, but some of you would definitely know what I'm talking about. Australia banned social media by law for Australians under the age of 16. Rather than sounding off about it, we decided we'd bring in someone who's actually been covering it, knows it in more than glancing detail. Let's be honest, both of us only know it in glancing detail. So we brought Cam Wilson, who's a reporter at Crikey, in.
The associate editor.
That's me.
Is that your title?
That's my title.
I apologise.
I have a question. Am I the first person who's been on this podcast who's ever actually posted in your Discord?
Oh, that's a good point. I think you actually you
might be. Is
I think you
Nolan?
are.
I feel like Nolan might have posted very.
No,
early.
he's not. Nolan doesn't pay to subscribe. I think actually Nolan unsubscribed. I think he free rides on his wife's subscription.
Okay.
G'day if you're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you are. The first person who's been inside the snake pit
Wow.
is now on the podcast itself. That's
Oh,
great.
Damien Fox. Oh no, he's not in the Discord though. He's premium, but he's not in the Discord.
Okay, there we go. We can officially say you're the first guest who's been in the Discord.
It's great to be here. It's like am I allowed to talk of like back in the 2010s it was like a meme for adult performers to be like perform with a fan. Yeah. It was like can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
There was like fuck a fan videos was a thing.
Oh yeah.
That's like this.
It is actually a bit like...
Is it?
None of that's smart. Okay, so
That's the kind of smart they're actually trying to stop
I
kids
said,
from getting
I
access
said
to.
it's very much like that. You say it's not. Let's see if we can figure it out over the course of the episode. Obviously, you've been reporting this a lot for Crikey. You've been talking about the social media ban. So you better walk us through the intricacies of how they've arrived at this and how they're going to enforce it, allegedly. And this brings us into a great moment of cultural or opinion demarcation because obviously Raf is a huge supporter of the social media ban.
yes.
Just
Cards on the table. Voice of Middle Australia. I stand with the 80% of Australians who agree with the social media ban.
Yep. Cam has been relatively critical of it, and myself as an impartial moderator, I just want to get at the truth. I want to get at the truth, and I want to do what's best for the children of Australia and the parents of Australia. Cards on the table. That's my only priority here today.
Yeah. You're curious. You're naturally curious.
I'm naturally a curious person about how all the chips will fall at the end of the day.
Is there anything we should outline first?
Well,
Cam should outline.
Well, no.
What is the social media ban?
We'll start with Cam. We'll go straight from the top. We'll pretend that our audience hasn't been following this, and potentially of our American followers, if they even click play on this episode, dubious. What is the social media ban?
Yeah, so the Australian government, federal government, has passed a law last week before, requiring social media companies to take reasonable steps to stop Australians under the age of 16 from accessing their services. And that was the result of like a 6-month campaign where we saw, there's kind of been this global push, right? Like of kids these days, we have concerns about them,
Agreed.
Yep. People worried about things like, mental health. They're worried about just the general well-being. There was a book by this guy, Jonathan Haidt, which is kind of like a global phenomenon. Like, I think actually got just given the Goodreads book of 2024 called The Anxious Generation. And it was saying, kids these days, they're all messed up, and the reason is those dang phones. So amid that kind of global push, we saw Australian politicians kind of vaguely say we're for this. And then eventually, as an election kind of approaches next year, the Albanese government, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, is very much pro this, said we're doing it. And in pretty short order, at the start of November, they came up with a law, which is a bit of a framework, just saying that we will do this. We'll give ourselves 12 months to figure out the details. And then after a week or two of Parliament, they passed it. And now it's time to figure out how it all works.
And my impression from having read the legislation is it's pretty thin on the ground in terms of how they're actually going to enforce it.
They got 12 months, mate.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can figure out lots of things in 12 months. But what's the thinking out there in terms of how they're going to enforce a social media ban?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of like two big questions with this, right? Which is like, the first thing is like, do you want to ban kids under 16 from social media?
Yes.
And then, so yes, a maybe. But once you get past that question, the next question is, how do you actually do something like this? And this has been like a really, really big question for tech companies for pretty much as long as the internet has been around, because it's very hard to know who's actually at the other end of a computer, right? Unless you take, government ID, credit card, or that kind of thing.
Yep.
And when it came to what they call like age verification, age assurance, just I think about a year or so ago, the E-Safety Commissioner, which is like Australia's internet regulator, they did a report, which is like, how do we do this? If we wanted to, how would we, restrict online gambling, online porn, like that kind of stuff in what technologies could we use? And at the time, they were kind of like, there's really not any country in the world that's doing it properly yet. So
I can think of one.
The floor is yours.
Obviously, our friends in the Chinese Communist Party have had some experience with internet regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say they've done it rather successfully.
And they've got the Chinese as the kids gaming ban, right?
They did. They banned gaming. Yeah. And
or like restricted to like an hour a day.
I don't. It's one of those things where it's like something gets reported that it's happening in China.
1 hour of gaming a day.
1 hour of gaming a day.
I'm just saying, there's one country that seems to have done it rather successfully.
Yeah.
Well, in the Western world, no one has really kind of done this yet. There are a few.
Well, we can't build anything anymore.
That's true.
So we can't build highways. We can't build
batteries,
beautiful Art Deco buildings, and we can't build an internet filter for children under the age of 16.
Or can we? Because they're saying, we're going to do this, we'll say we're going to do it, and we'll figure it out. And so, while other countries around the world, I think like France has like some restriction, but you can have parental consent to use social media, I think like under 15. Australia, they're just like, literally, nope, you're not going to be able to use it. And so at the moment, they're running this trial, which is looking at various technologies, everything from like biometric analysis, so like scanning faces, analyzing voices. I actually chatted to the guy who's contracted to run the trial, and he's like, did you know that hands are very, very good indicators of your age? I was like, I absolutely did not know that.
Hands?
Hands. He's like, by the way...
Well, feet. Maybe we should have to show feet in order to use social media.
Imagine the Australian government gets into a pickle where they start...
The database of feet.
The only way they can enforce the social media ban is by accumulating a database of millions of children's feet. That would be problematic to say the least.
An incredible honeypot of data that people want to get.
Okay, that's interesting. So what
are the downsides
of feet?
So the people that are running these trials, or like the people that are engaged for these trials, how far along are these programs? Yeah,
so the one they're doing for the Australian government is just happening now. So they're looking at biometric analysis, but they're also looking at other things like what they call, I think it's double-blind tokenized systems, which is kind of like the digital ID that the government has, but not necessarily. There are third parties that do this. But essentially, think about it is like, if you don't want to give your driver's license to Facebook or Meta, you can instead have this company that's like, we will verify the ID and then we will tell Meta that we've verified you, but you don't actually have to give your ID to Meta, and then we can then tell everyone else that you've verified yourself. And
there are actually a bunch of companies.
There's heaps and heaps. This has been a long running internet thing with this like identification, right?
Yeah.
Like identification online, where it's like Vera, I think is literally one.
Vera's one.
Vera.
Persona is a big one. That there's Buzzy and there's like multi-billion-dollar valuation, and I'm pretty sure Persona is the one that LinkedIn uses when you want to get your LinkedIn verified tick to show that you're a real guy, and attempt and get 35% more outreach from recruiters or whatever it is they promise.
So what we're saying here to you, dear listener, is you don't have to like upload your ID every time or whatever. There is one source of truth that if you log into them, they can tell the other, whichever third party, yes, this person is who they say they are. That's what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, and so like there's one that Meta uses, which is called Yoti, and they kind of this happens at the moment. If they have reason to suspect that you are under 13, because that's the minimum age for Facebook, they will say, okay, you've either got to do a face scan or you've got to upload your ID, and we need one of those to let you use your account. And so you've got a kind of choice, but you kind of got to do something that is a little bit, higher bar than just saying I am 18 in a like little age box,
like
putting in a birthday.
Like on alcohol websites or porno websites for that matter.
Exactly. And so
I promise I am 18 plus.
I promise you.
They must have a crazy amount of like 100-year-olds who use Pornhub, right? Like people just being like, like I was born in 1910.
There was someone actually brought us up in our Discord. There was a classic like PC adventure game called Leisure Suit Larry.
Yeah.
Which was like an adventure game back in the 90s, a bit raunchy. Like, you played this kind of sleaze bag. And their age verification technology is that every time you open the game, it would give you like a quiz to prove that you're an adult. But because it was kind of because the people that were making it, whatever, the questions were like, who won the 1956 World Series? And it was like multiple choice. And that's the sort of shit they should be rolling out on social media. Like to access Snapchat, who won 200-meter sprint in the Mexico City Olympics?
Well, who was the French sprinter who did not participate in the 400-meter women's sprinting in the 2000 Sydney Olympic Games?
See, there we go. That's the kind of stuff.
Good stuff.
It's like pub trivia kind of level stuff. Who was the singer in the Skyhooks? And how did he die?
Leonard Skinner.
You're out, mate. No pornography for you. Anyway, sorry.
The other thing that I think that we'll probably use is like user data inference. So like if you think about it, if you've had a Facebook account for 15 years, you're probably not 14 years old. So there is a whole range of things that they're testing to be like, how can you figure out your age? How effective and like, good is it at actually getting it correct? What kind of biases are there?
But who's doing this? Because obviously like the government can't scan your Facebook or even a third party. Like this is what Facebook and whatnot are testing.
Yeah, so no, the government is running a trial that's kind of put out to tender that someone's running, and then I think it's by the middle of next year they'll give a report that will say we tested all these methods, in the Australian context, we thought about it, and like here's how good they are at, how effective they are at determining whether someone's 16 or older. Here's what conditions they need to work in, like all the kind of like technical nitty gritty that you need to think about when you're actually then being like, hey, what are we actually going to require these companies to use? Like, what are the reasonable steps that they have to do to make sure that under 16-year-olds aren't using their platform?
Yeah. And because it's also worth remembering just in terms of like the tech company level, nobody at any of these, at any level here, wants to be responsible for the ones that make the judgment call. Meta, especially Meta, I think is probably like the standard bearer here. They have a like reasonably good idea of how old someone is that has an account on their site based on a whole bunch of different metrics because they have all these other responsibilities, even in jurisdictions where they're not banning anyone from accessing it. They have a pretty good idea, based on exactly what you said, all sorts of sort of data inputs, how old someone is, based on their behavior. But Meta would also really prefer not to be the ones to make an ultimate, A, because they don't want to lose customers, but B, they don't want to be the ones who are like saddled with the obligation of proving it.
Yeah, because at the moment, like there is a de facto social media ban for kids under 13. Like all the major social media companies say your minimum age is 13. But the steps that they take to actually enforce that, it's like drastically different. So like Meta, we said before, I kind of think that they're probably doing something already that's like close to what I think we might end up at. But something like Snapchat, all you got to do is just say, here's my birth date. And like, I think like these kinds of things are really complex. A lot of people who are weighing in this debate have grown up on an internet and they're like, without kind of, anything more sophisticated than this. And they're like, I turn out okay, therefore like this is fine for everyone else.
Did you turn out okay though, mate?
Yeah. It's like survivor bias, right? That like the picture of the plane with all the...
Yeah, but I don't know if it's bias. Like these people who are saying they turned out okay, are they okay?
Yeah.
This is why we have a whole day to celebrate this. Are you okay?
If you say,
mate, were you on the computer too much? Actually, I saw a bio in Blue Sky that really stuck with me the other day, where it was like, I've been on the computer all day since I was 13. Why would I stop now?
Okay, so what are the bad bits?
Well, I mean, the constant pushback, right, is that ideas of privacy. People feel pretty uncomfortable about handing this stuff over. They've obviously been trained for pretty much all the time that the internet has existed.
But you're saying, like, Meta requires ID basically already?
Yeah, I mean, so that's when they have reason to suspect you're 13. So, like, for example...
I'm pretty sure I had to verify. Maybe it's because I have an advertising account.
Advertising account, you do have to do it. So, like, if you think about it at the moment, Meta already takes, if you're a advertiser, particularly if you're doing political advertisements, and if you've been reported for being underage, or they also they've announced that they have they call it an adult classifier, which essentially is scanning posts to be like the things that make us think that you might be 13 years old.
So if you start posting,
I think mine was more about I did run political ads for a political campaign rather than my posting. I would like to.
Well, so when you posted 6 times on one Saturday night, I love Roblox.
Yeah.
You don't think that was relevant at all?
So said at the same time I was running political ads.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what you kind of got to do at the moment. But most people, you just register an account, you write your age, and there's no reason to suspect that you're not that age. I think what you'll see in practice with this law is that, so I should say that the actual stick of it is that if you are found not to have taken reasonable steps, then they, I think, have up to $50 million fines. So the idea is it's a big stick, do the right thing, figure out your processes.
But the complaint is data privacy.
Yeah, so I mean,
you don't want to give your ID to Facebook, the company that has literally the connection with every single one of your friends and everything you've posted, and you upload pictures of yourself, and also you've actually given them access to your entire photo library with all the metadata of all of those photos being taken, but including the photos of your license.
Yes.
That you've previously taken.
Yeah, that one. But I mean, the thing is, it's like, obviously Meta is the big one, but this is really supposed to apply to all social media platforms. In the analysis they released along with the legislation, they expected 100 social media platforms to have to do this. And one of the critiques of the law, which was like pretty bare bones, it was very much like, we'll figure it out. It gives a pretty broad definition of what a social media platform is. It's made a lot of people be like, could Roblox be a social media platform? Could the Whirlpool forums be a social media platform?
Should not be. That's a very important resource.
Yeah, I don't think children should use social media, but they should be aware of like the tech spec comparison between various wireless routers.
They should be allowed to go through 30 different threads all linking to each other about the effectiveness of the whirlybird.
In fact, I think we should have something that kind of vaguely resembles Scouts, except for setting up mesh Wi-Fi. But yeah, I think it's like actually one of the problems that I see when I look at it is that this
is not a problem. They'll sort this stuff out. Like, they're not going to be like, oh no, we accidentally banned the Whirlpool forums. They'll just sort it.
No, not Whirlpool. I don't care about children having access to or not access to Whirlpool. I think it's more the fact that it's like they excluded gaming, right?
Yeah.
Gaming is not on the table.
I mean, I would obviously add, it doesn't go far enough. Is that your argument? Because I agree.
Yeah. No,
but I mean, both in terms of age and yes, in terms of...
No, but my point is like, okay, you don't let kids go on Instagram. Great. Don't let kids go on Snapchat. But they're allowed to be on Fortnite and Roblox.
You're more into the Chinese system.
I'm far more inclined to the Chinese system. No, but again, it's like
the modern social media platform is Fortnite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Or group chats. So they also excluded messaging apps as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
so it's like if the goal is, and it's at least publicly they're talking about, we want to cut down on bullying, make sure it's like, are you really solving any problems?
Well, let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good here.
Mm.
We're solving some problems,
Such as
R18 plus material going into the minds of children. For one, radicalization still happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gateway to those more terrible group chats.
Okay, yeah.
So one of the things that critics of this say could be an unintended consequence is, these laws realistically are going to apply to the big players, the people who have presence in Australia who, have to worry about a $50 million fine. The fear is that if you make the big boys do the things they have to do and keep under 16-year-olds out, people will go elsewhere. Teens will find less moderated, less regulated places like Telegram, like they'll end up in kind of like other lesser known
What's the
apps.
pathway to Telegram? It's like, I am an 11-year-old and I'm doing nothing. I'm just like playing footy, and unfortunately I'm not able to do anything on my phone other than watch Paw Patrol or whatever it is. I guess
They're watching Paw Patrol. That's a
Bit
problem.
over Paw Patrol. Well, now in the new like glorious Australia or whatever, I would have banned Paw Patrol as well, actually, for the record. Regardless,
Because of the would you accept a Paw Patrol without the cop?
they have to remove it. They have to remove the cop.
The cop has got to go,
Yeah,
but firefighter's fine.
firefighter.
I actually don't know what the other ones are.
Garbo.
Is there
There's a Garbo.
there's a garbage dog?
Yeah.
What else?
There's someone in a plane.
There's someone in the water, isn't there? We got a water.
A water paw patrol? What kind of organization is this? What's it? What's
don't know.
what's the governing entity?
Well, as I said, it's banned in my household. I wouldn't know. Regardless, okay, so I'm an 11-year-old. I'm just like normal, and then I'm like, oh damn, I wish I could use Instagram. Well, I guess I can't. Better find 4chan. Like, this is like.
Well, maybe.
But I don't think
free social media allowed
No,
to be
no,
no,
for under 16-year-old.
You hear it from kids at school.
Exactly.
How did you get onto any forum?
Yeah, but okay, but you're talking about a minority here. You're like, the radicalization engine is that you find some random friggin' group on Facebook and they're saying, damn, Facebook aren't going to allow me to post this stuff about the Jews, but if you come over here, then I will be able to. Or whatever. Or Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate got banned from social media. And so they tried to follow him to
That
whatever.
was YouTube, though, which is not included.
Which is not included.
But he also got banned from YouTube, right?
Is he?
He's on places like Rumble, I know. And
Exactly,
and
but you
that's
wouldn't
the people.
just jump like straight without. The point is, the more friction between Andrew Tate and children or whatever, the less likely children are to watch Andrew Tate if you're worried about Andrew Tate's material. I personally think he has some really good points about masculinity. That's a joke. That's a joke. You might bring in some more listeners here, and I just want to be clear. Well, that was a joke.
I mean, you mentioned 4chan before. A funny thing about the way this law is written is that it specifically actually bans platforms from having accounts for teens. Like, that's the thing you've got to stop. So
Yeah,
you can use...
that's sensible.
Yeah. So you can use YouTube, like, because you can just search whatever. You can still actually use TikTok and YouTube Shorts. I was like browsing on my phone on the app, don't need to log in, and it'll still customize based on what you're doing. So this idea of like the algorithmic recommendations actually still going to happen. And 4chan, of course, doesn't actually have accounts. So that's not actually going to end up being banned either. So you've kind of got, I mean, again, critics of the bill say it doesn't do everything. Proponents of the bill say, well, we're trying to, add friction, get, kids off the dang phones and onto the footy fields.
To kill a snake, chop off its head.
Is that what they did? Anthony Albanese say that?
He should have.
Do you think that would have been threatening if he said that on the news?
No, I'm just going to say, like, critics of the bill saying, like, it doesn't go far enough. It's like, okay, sure. As I said, I agree. It doesn't cover all bases. Yes, I agree. It's a step in the right direction.
I mean, I think, like, realistically, it is insane that just for essentially, like, 2 decades of popular internet use, that there's just been, like, the real way that they've figured out age is just by saying, can you please tell me honestly?
Tick a box, yeah.
And it is deranged that has kind of been accepted, and that I don't think governments haven't done more. And like realistically, I mean, like some of the concerns about like privacy stuff, like we hand over our like fucking IDs for everything. Like every like rental, that you've applied for, you've handed over your ID to some like bumfuck like local real estate agent.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and I'm kind of balking at the idea of giving it to Meta, which probably has, probably like a spend on security at the level of like a small island nation's GDP. Like they're going to be
medium island nation's GDP possibly.
Potentially. Perhaps New Zealand.
No, and as you said, Meta, they actually don't want to hold a whole trove of IDs, and so they will get a third party. So that is, yes, still that's like a single point of failure. But as you say, like you've uploaded your ID to, at this stage, 20 different platforms, like over the course of, applying for real estates, hiring renter-cars, friggin' hiring a golf buggy at your local golf course, like requires you to put over an ID. Like
go to pubs, the scanners, like you.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are multiple troves of your ID, and as you say, could be worse people than Meta, and Meta aren't even going to have it themselves. Like my personal opinion is that it should all be like a government. MyGov or MyGov ID should just be your login for a lot of places. But.
Yeah, and I mean, so the government has said, hey, we're not going to allow it so that social media platforms can mandate that you use either government ID or the digital ID.
Because people freak out about that.
Because they're freaked out about it. And again, I think like a lot of this does have to do with this security, privacy, totalitarian government. But realistically, it's not a comparison between are we going to do the status quo, we're going to do like hand over this government ID or nothing at all. Like at the moment, we're handing it out everywhere. I think it's just kind of insane. I think like eventually something is going to happen. The problem is that like I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh fuck, like I've got a footy game on in an hour, and for some reason someone's reported me as being 13, and now like Meta has asked.
It's a good troll.
Yeah, it's a great troll. Actually, I think if you like post on someone's wall like
I'm 13, suck my dick, Israel.
Yeah, yeah, that. Or like happy 12th birthday.
Happy 12th. That's good. That's good.
And like if enough people do it, like I think some people get like flagged by the system enough to do it. So you do that to your mate, and then they're stuck, and they've either got to scan their face, which they're not super keen about, or upload their ID.
They scan their face that they're not super keen about, but they will post 900 photos of themselves.
Yeah. Although I think it is worth pointing out. So there is the I feel like there's like a delineation between the two privacy arguments. On the one hand, there are kind of like digital rights people, electronic frontiers foundation type people who are like, we should have autonomy over our data and control over our data. Kind of feeds up from like old school internet ways of thinking about things. But I think the actual side of the argument that is triumphing in like among general people is kind of like the wingnut right wing
for sure
anti-government side, where it was like this is, and the whole reason that the Albanese government has put this through in conjunction with like their misinformation bill, which crashed and burned, didn't eventually go through, plus their other digital regulation stuff, is just like a gateway to full government control of what you can say online. And like, take that with a grain of salt. And
because right now you have so much freedom to be able to post to a Meta platform. What do you really think? That is true freedom of speech.
Yeah. No, totally. But this is the argument that I think actually has a bit of thrust among the general population.
Is that it's going to lead to censorship of speech,
exactly,
or whatever,
and it's
because they're going
to
identify what you say with your ID. Well, they're going to be feeding back to the government.
Well, I don't know. It seems like this stuff is just a real sequel from like COVID era stuff. And this is like.
And then Australia has like a pretty rich history of opposing this stuff. Like going back to the like Australia card in the 80s. Like that was for a book that I've been writing, I was like looking back into it and some conspiracy theories related to it. It's like there was the opposition to that was like massive. Like it was like they're having like concerts with like Peter Garrett, who said that this was the biggest issue facing Australia right now. It brought like a crazy like coalition of people together, and they defeated it. But then there was also like big pushbacks against things like the tax file numbers. Like there was a kind of Australia Card 2 in the like early 2000s by John Howard.
To be clear, the Australia Card was just a national ID card that you could get.
Yeah.
that was issued by the federal government instead of the state government.
Yeah.
And yeah, people did freak out about that massively in the 80s.
Yeah. And so like there is a bit of that in the Australian, I guess, cultural identity. I just think that it's like they talk about it, but then when they rolled out digital driver's licenses, a lot of people just use them and they're sick. Like,
unfortunately, they rock.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna raise a funny point. I had to pick something up from the post office. And I arrived at the post office and I was about to walk in and get it, and I was like, oh shit, I still haven't updated my ID because I moved house like a few months ago. I was like, fuck, I haven't updated my ID. So I just opened up the Surface New South Wales app, opened up a beautiful, smooth form, entered my new address, and it was reflected on my ID within like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And I went in and picked up my package. And I was like, what the hell was stopping anyone from doing that? Obviously, it would probably look bad if you changed your address
several times.
repeatedly.
Yeah. Because you knew that a neighbor had like some hot stuff coming in.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw them browsing. They're gonna.
I'm not going to spell out like the particular like Ocean's 11 scheme that you've designed to like steal your neighbor's package. There are a few points of failure there where it's like,
yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, I was able to change my address and have it reflected on my ID immediately. Whereas previously, it would have to be mailed to you. You'd stick it on.
But didn't it have your name as well?
It does, yeah. The name, it does have the name.
So if
you can't change your name.
You can't change your name.
So presumably the package would have your name and your address.
That's true. Although
no, but I see what you're saying. There's probably some Ocean's 11 thing where you change your address and you talk to your electricity provider or whatever and say, "Here's my new address," and I don't know. You could question mark.
Or it just, and maybe there is too much friction to actually do anything crazy with it. But at the same time, I don't know. I think it's great. Don't get me wrong. Digital IDs from Surfing South Wales, I'm all for them, But I was also like, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
this is one of those things about stated preference versus revealed preference. Because, like, yes, everyone says that privacy is important until you want to post 900 times a day and you would like to see content that satisfies your dopamine receptors.
That's on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Seeing content that reflects your preferences.
Yeah.
Pretty high up.
Yeah. It's like, would you like to see yourself, but as Priscilla? It's like, oh yeah, I'll upload 100 photos of myself and just give you access to all of my data. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I want to see a cool photo of myself.
That is compelling. In fact, that's been a real, even like before generative AI, the opportunity to upload a picture of yourself and have it slightly changed.
Well, this is the thing. We're talking about like, oh, wait, they want me to upload my driver's license when like 6 years ago, everyone is getting Snapchat to do like full 3D scans of their head so that they can put like, oh, I'm an alien. I've got a monkey on my shoulder. Oh.
Well, luckily Snapchat appeared too incompetent to do anything with any of that.
I mean, I think like different audiences as well. Like I really do expect talking to my mum, and when she gets like a text being like, hey, your package has arrived, like, do you want to, and you weren't here, do you want to go, like, you can go tell us what to do with it. She freaks out about that. Or if she's like, oh, I need to like buy something online, can you help me? But she's like, oh, I don't want to like text you my credit card number because someone might intercept it. Like, I think there is like a real literacy difference when it comes to this stuff. And also like, there's a lot of social media platforms out there, and I personally feel like Meta's security is probably pretty good, but once you get past some of the like, top 10 out of this 100 that they reckon there are, it might get kind of dodgy, and these companies probably don't really want to do it either. One part
companies definitely don't want to do it,
and that's why I think it's like, in my mind, the ideal situation that actually Meta agrees with, or has been like pushing, and now like other social media companies have been kind of chiming in as well, is the idea of devices, like doing it at a device level. So
this is the whole argument that's been for ages. Meta doesn't want to do it, so they say Apple should do it. Apple don't want to do it, and they say Meta should do it.
I think it makes conceptual sense for like Apple and Google to do it because
I agree.
they have the app stores. They, in particular, like Apple does like, like their kind of privacy focus. And they could do this like.
They do the same way they do payments.
Exactly. Yeah. And they already have like features on their phones for like kids and stuff. So you can have like, I had to set up an iPhone recently and it's like, is this for you or is it for a family member? And you can select a kid with limited options.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously the reason they don't want to do this is because actually having to verify people's identity like to a higher level, not just saying, getting them to volunteer it, is a pain in the ass. But for me, it makes sense. I don't think they're ever going to want to do it, but like, would some like government just kind of go like, let's just do it?
It makes sense on the simple level where it's like single point of failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a device level thing. Everything that you do, you access through your device. Surely Apple should do it.
You're already putting your credit card in for a lot of things.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You got 2 of the top 5 biggest companies in the world. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, guess what? You want to be a platform that hosts basically every single piece of interaction we do all the time, every day,
and
for hours and hours and hours and collect 30%.
And clip the ticket 30% of revenue.
Guess what?
You're going to start working for that.
Yeah.
Even if it means you have to send someone to the house and like eyeball someone and see if they look 16. You got to do that. Yeah. But also, like, there's, I guess,
But as far as identity resolution is concerned, yes, I think that's the ideal thing that in a perfect world, it's like, yes. And what we're talking about here is, so when I go to log into Facebook, it goes, we need to check that your age. It pings Apple. Facebook don't know, or, whoever, like your Roblox, doesn't get to see your ID. They just get a yes or a no back from Google or Apple.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Yeah. But again, I guess.
And if you're under 16, you're not allowed to use Roblox. So Roblox is strictly for 17 plus.
Unfortunately, it does seem like Roblox is fine.
Yeah, Roblox is fine.
Yeah, even though it's so. Did you see that? What was it? The Hindenburg research?
The
Hindenburg research.
Where they were like, it's like a hive of pedophiles or whatever. Yeah. Which obviously every time I see like content from, I've never downloaded it or opened it, but every time I see content from it,
from which one? From Roblox or from Hindenburg?
Roblox. Every time I open one of their short seller reports, I'm repulsed that someone would do that to a publicly listed company.
Yeah. In particular, the Adani Corp. Obviously, they own 25% of Down Round. So.
Yeah, that's it. 25% Saudi public investment fund, 25% Adani. 25% is the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Yeah, of course.
That's
good. And then 25% is the Canadian Teachers Pension Fund.
The Ontario Teachers Pension Fund. But no, every time I see any content from Roblox, the skeezy vibes radiating off it are palpable.
If it's not criminal, it should be.
It should absolutely be illegal. I mean, even before you get to like, obviously, to target for people with malign intent, sure. But just like you look at it and you're like, this is ontologically evil. I can't endorse this behavior.
So
but anyway.
So but my understanding is that you think that the bill is bad. And we haven't, seems so far everything has been good that you've said.
Well, I mean, one of the big, I think, arguments against it is that there actually have been efforts underway from Australian government and other governments around the world to be doing regulation to make social media platforms less harmful to kids. Because, I mean, we haven't really covered it, but like, I mean, my understanding of when you actually talk to the real academics, experts who really do research on it, at best, they're kind of like, we're really not sure
if social media is bad.
But yeah.
Yeah, I hear this. And like big tobacco.
Exactly, yeah. And look, in my mind, I think like the common, like, I think the reasonable approach is like, probably not great, but I mean, there's a lot of things that like kids do that aren't necessarily great for them, but like, with supervision, yada, yada, yada. But with like things like, Australia has like a bunch of regulation that they've been bringing in that is trying to like change what platforms have to do to, improve privacy for kids. The Online Safety Commissioner e-Safety Commissioner is like bringing in these like internet regulations that most people aren't really paying attention to, but are making platforms have to do, treat, like, for example, they're doing one right now on, they're consulting on one that's going to change the way that websites, social media platforms, and search engines deal with adult material. And we might actually end up with, I mean, it's got shockingly little attention. They might actually say, oh no, this kind of like age verification stuff, we're also going to have to apply it to porn sites and gambling websites, which they don't at the moment.
My understanding is that was almost like a lot of the framework of this, the ID stuff was first pitched around adult sites. Is in that like there was like a lot of reporting into like how would we? Well, a lot of the information came across as like if we were to impose like a ban on pornography websites, how would we implement it? And like a lot of that thinking kind of crossed over into this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of influenced it a bit, and I think they're very, very kind of close together. But I mean, I think like so you've got like the Australian government really trying to, they're doing these kind of interesting things that they're not as splashy as a ban. At the same time, like I think like some of the social media companies are introducing features just for kids. I'm not going to say out of the goodness of their hearts. Like I do think it's in response to this like public pressure and government pressure. But for example, like Instagram now, they have this thing called like teen accounts, which is like for example, you can't message, if you say you're between 13 and 16, you can't message adults and adults can't message you. Pretty reasonable. If you ban them from social media, that type of account doesn't need to exist anymore. And if we expect kids to get around the ban, which, Anthony Albanese, all the politicians who are implementing it say that, yeah, it'll happen. All of a sudden, they're now going back to using these social media platforms in a way that is not customized for their experience. Is not actually trying to make, decisions to limit the potential harms. So, while like there's this like kind of sophisticated and nuanced, policy kind of approach happening on one hand. On the other hand, the government just was like, get all the kids off social media.
We must not regulate the social media platforms because it looks like they're doing some good things.
No, but that's not it. They're like they are regulating it. The point is like,
I think self-regulation.
No, I mean I can understand why people are like, it's not moving fast enough, yada yada yada. But it is like, by banning them, you shouldn't just compare banning them to not banning them. You should compare, banning them to not banning them, but introducing like a digital duty of care or, strengthening like the online safety, yada, yada, yada.
But wouldn't like banning them and then putting in a framework for like what like isn't considered a social media probably be a way to force them to make safe kids versions quicker than like attempting to do product design via government?
I mean, like, depends on the social media companies. I mean, like one part of this that people kind of ask is they're like, why aren't the tech companies like fighting back like harder against this? Like they really weren't like using all their muscle. I think part of it is because I think people don't realize that they actually do some things and they already do, they're supposed to ban kids under 13. So like, again, for some of the bigger ones, they're like, this isn't a massive change in business. And I really don't think they're making like a shitload of money off like 14-year-olds.
You can't really monetize it that much. Obviously, they still want that like on-ramp. But yeah, you can't really monetize 15-year-olds.
Maybe Meta is actually kind of like good, like ban people under 16 because like Snapchat's doing better there. So we're going to get them when they're, coming into like Instagram years.
Yeah.
You just need to think about like, there are kind of things that we can necessarily do, but like, when Australia bans, teens from 13 to 16, in the scheme of things, like Australia is often the test ground for social media companies' products, but they don't like, it's not a huge market for them. And they just might be like, just put it in the too hard basket. Like, we don't really have to do anything. It's not going to massively change our balance sheet. So like, we're not going to respond to it.
As in like, they'll just cop the fines.
No. As in like, I don't think this is going to force them to like come up with like, necessarily like drastically change their business models because we're just such a small part of their overall business. I think like with things like the News Media Bargaining Code, they pushed back really hard, and then they also saw how that kind of spread across the world. I don't think that they feel the same threat with something like this.
I think they really,
because it's not a massive. I honestly don't think it's that massive a difference for them in terms of business.
No, I don't think so. And like they haven't actually been campaigning against this or out in the market talking about it nearly as much. And I think part of it, as you say, I think a lot of it come down, like at least for Meta specifically, as you said, they're like, all right, if for some reason Australia started a firestorm of global regulation and all of a sudden every market, I know the UK were in response talking about doing something similar. In fact, when I saw the news story that was like the UK are considering an under 16 social ban, I was like, is this like a Five Eyes security thing that everyone decided to do?
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know if they would necessarily cop it on the chin because those UK would be a wealthier market than us, and certainly the US would be, even though the US, some states do have regulation that kind of resembles this. But I think they might be like, okay, well, we can't let kids under 16 on Instagram.
I mean, also, it could also be, 3D chess, 4D chess, sorry. 3D chess is also pretty cool.
Yeah,
but a lot of you Zoomer listeners would never have played 3D chess.
3D chess is just
Isn't
chess.
that sad? Yeah, that's right. In real life with your fingers. But regardless, like if you're
Get used to using that.
yeah, exactly.
Used to it.
Yeah, if you're a 14-year-old listening to this,
You'll only be able to do that in Roblox, unfortunately.
no. But regardless, if you're Meta, you can be like, okay, we can pretty easily enforce this. We're obviously in a dominant position. We can now shit on all of the Snapchats and all of our like smaller upstart competitors and point out to the government constantly that they should be fined. They should be fined. They're the bad ones. They should be fined and banned, if not. And then, wait for people to hit a monetizable age, i.e. 16, and just swoop them in. It's probably not a big hit to the bottom line. Because like realistically, if some other social media app takes off that's not them, I mean, it'll be kneecapped. Like it's not going to be allowed to take off. So it's probably not the worst thing in the world for Google and Meta.
It's actually like, if you think about it, it is a policy, I think, that ends up reinforcing the current leaders, right? Like if you're particularly like I think if you think about like how social media apps come about, they're popular with young people, the new trendy thing who don't already have these like set patterns about how they use social media. Now that's actually one less risk to someone like Facebook because you've now
it's the classic thing, like, why Sportsbet doesn't care if there's an end to gambling advertising at the end of the day. They've already got a dominant position. They don't want challenges. It is kind of, you're right. It's like
competitors start with 14, 15-year-olds.
They do. They start with I mean, that's why every time, apart from something like Blue Sky or whatever, which or Thread.
But let's be frank. Blue Sky is not going to be a Meta competitor.
Matt,
we don't know.
You could eat your bloody words, man. But like, whenever you hear of a new social platform that's emerged, Be Real, that didn't play out too well. Rip Be Real.
Rip Be Real.
Are people still using that?
Yeah.
Be Real was acquired by Voodoo.
That's right. It was acquired.
Yeah.
It's like a French.
I thought it was acquired. That's
it's like a French media holding company.
Yeah, Voodoo. Yeah,
not really. And I think it was like
$500 million.
$500 million
euros.
Actually, that's higher than I thought. I thought it was less than that, but I guess that's not a bad exit for an app that had like plummeted in terms of use. I mean, for me, the main reason that I would look at this and say it's probably not that effective is less about the privacy thing. I'm not particularly enamored by the argument that it's digital ID that's going to force us into a lifetime of servitude under the thumb of the Australian Labor Party. Could happen, but if it does, whatever. But I think it's more the fact that it's like, it is scattershot. It's very reliant on who they get to enforce it and how they enforce it. And at the end of the day...
What's wrong with that?
No, I look at it and I say...
That's every law.
Well, yeah, but what was the point? If kids can still use Roblox and that becomes a vector for whatever...
let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good here.
So, I mean, I think like there are... I mean, we haven't gone into it too much, but there are actually groups who seem to get a lot out of social media use, like LGBT groups and like other people who maybe don't have connections for their kind of identity group within just like everyday life. So they find a lot of value out of it.
Look, I would just say if we're outsourcing our kind of public mental health policy to social media sites, then we've got some big problems in society. I'm going to say, don't get me wrong, I do get that people maybe find their community, but maybe that's an instance where it's like potentially there should be other avenues of support, not just like hopefully Meta.
Maybe they shouldn't.
No, I mean that's just my opinion. Maybe Whirlpool forums.
They should. They should.
But like honestly, if we're like, well, we need Meta to exist because like our institutions and like our public health system is like not capable of dealing with people like, or lonely people or people who don't like. On the outside, that's, I mean, it's true probably, but like replacing it with fucking Meta, I don't know, is that good?
So I think like one of the ways that it like ends up, I mean, like one of the ways I see it playing out, which is a pain for people, which is like, so you've got this, you say you got to take reasonable steps, and because Meta is like, I don't know what reasonable, or you've told me what reasonable steps are, but I really don't want to be fined. Like, it's just not worth it. I'm going to ratchet up like how hard it is to get in. And so I'm going to make every user be doing these things.
Yeah.
Like for them, the incentives, obviously they don't want to piss off users, but they also don't want to be fined $50 million and potentially like multiple times. So I think you could end up with this kind of fuck system where not only are social media companies being really like onerous to use, but at the same time, it's kind of like easy to get around, or like teens are like off, I don't know, spinning up their own like Mastodon instances, or like doing something weird.
That would be a funny result. If the result is that the Fediverse really takes off because teens are like hosting like lambdas with their own fucking...
I would consider that the worst public policy failure in modern history if all of a sudden every Australian teenager was using Mastodon. Another wonderful episode of Down Round completed, folks. And if you're hearing this, it means that you got all the incredible value from that episode and you've paid us nothing.
No.
But we're giving the opportunity to subscribe to Down Round Premium.
Yes.
Head to downround.net and subscribe for our premium product, and you will get an extra episode every week, plus access to our extremely lively Discord.
2.
And that's it.
No, no ads.
No ads. Sorry.
Well, this is it. Fewer ads. We reserve the right to put ads.
I don't think we should say that in any of them.